Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. Thanks for arriving. We're going to give everybody a minute or two to arrive and grab a glass of water and leave one meeting and join this demo here. We'll get it started here in just a few minutes. Okay, we'll go ahead and get things started. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you very much for attending our Bullhorn One post Bullhorn Engage technical demonstration. We're really excited to have the audience that we have today. I've gone over the guest list and certainly have met virtually every one of you over the past week. I have my counterpart David Laster with me. We're going to do our demo today, starting off with just a real brief introduction of GraVoc. Want to make sure that we understand that you have the opportunity to see who we are as the broader organization. We're going to set the table a little bit about our value proposition, how we can bring value to your Bullhorn One projects, and also your Great Plains, Business Central, or your ERP upgrade that you have in front of you over the next 6, 8, 12 months. And then David's going to do a product walkthrough. And then we're also going to leave some time at the end of the demonstration today for Q&A. You might see controls that are on your window where you can either chat or raise your hand or enter a question into a window. So we'll leave some time for us to have some Q&A with you. I also think if there are questions still hanging out there, we're not looking at a hard stop today, and we'll be glad to stay on and also, continue on. Bear with us on the controls. We're using some of these new Teams features. We're going to try to also unmute us towards the end so we can, if you do raise your hand, instead of typing a long, complicated question, we'll just unmute you and allow you to ask the question verbally, which will probably be a lot easier over the long run. So. We look forward to this. Let's get this started here. So real briefly, here is GraVoc. GraVoc is, we just celebrated our 30th anniversary. We've grown to over 75 employees. And I would describe us as a mid-size family-run consulting company specializing in Microsoft products. We were started, as I said, 30 years ago as financial consultants. So that's actually our core competency. But since then, with two of the founders' children running different departments within the organization, we've grown into a multidisciplinary mid-size partner. So ERP services is is one of our strengths, but we also, coming from the Great Plains world and even the Microsoft SL world, and from the days where companies would host their environments in third-party clouds, we actually still have all that infrastructure and all that capability. So we have IT infrastructure. A big practice that is growing for us is our information security. We do quite a bit of audits as a third party with the banking industry. We do application development. We do cloud services and CRM services also. So we offer a lot of capabilities besides some of the functionality and capabilities that you're going to see today with our Bullhorn One connector. So how do we fit in? What is our core value proposition that we're going to be highlighting today with your Bullhorn One project, or currently going live with Bullhorn One, or you are live with Bullhorn One? How can we help improve your flows, your workflows, your some of the gaps that do exist? So Bullhorn One, as you know, has a portion of it in the pay and bill side of their environment that data needs to get over to payroll and common ERP platforms. And this is a common gap. And actually, this is a gap that's been out there, and typically it's been covered by a third-party product. So Workato is commonly used out there. Workato has their APIs that connects to QuickBooks or other ERP systems, and then they have skills with connecting it to Bullhorn One. And what we're hearing more of is that it does work. It is a platform and capability that certainly solves that problem, but we get a lot of feedback that it's generally unsatisfactory. It's limited in automation. Oftentimes it's built from scratch, depending upon who your partner is. And then, the error handling tends to be very black and white. Either it all passes or it all fails. And as we know from experience, that's actually not true. You could have 100 transactions and 97 will pass, but three will fail. And you'll see in today's demo with David how our capability really improves that. So we are hearing from the market that this process is just cumbersome, and we have a much better way to drive it. So the GraVoc's solution is based upon the Microsoft ERP platforms of Business Central and Great Plains, and we've got a connector that we've built. And I think the important part of this diagram is just showing how that it's inside Business Central, and it's also inside Great Plains. This isn't a bolt-on system that relies once again on another APIs. Is that the connection and the code is written inside Business Central, so therefore it's really reducing the points of potential failure or the points of API interaction by 50%. And on top of it, our capabilities and our ability to stage the data as it flows between the two platforms is highly improved. And so it's built in Business Central and Great Plains. It's better error handling, improved automation, fewer points of failure. And I think most importantly, kind of our secret sauce as an organization, and as I present teams into working with projects with you, our customer, and our prospects, is that we really do know BC and GP, and more importantly, we know Bullhorn One and the Bullhorn Systems Integrator. So we can offer a lot more value and a lot more skill than just quote unquote Business Central. These are the customers that we're working with. So each of these customers has our GraVoc connector that is connected to Bullhorn One. We're really proud of what we've done over the last 3 years of deploying this connector. We've learned a lot. We've improved our capabilities, and what you're going to be seeing today is a result of these companies getting started with our connector, getting that value, and then helping the product improve over time. Okay. So I'm going to hand the stage over to Mr. Laster and let David go ahead and get started with his demo. Thank you very much for letting me introduce GraVoc to you, and I'm going to hand it over to you, David.
All right, hello, testing 1, 2, 3, right here. Let's see.
Sound good.
Let me get my screen share going here. Thank you, Matt. Let me get the screen up. This is working just fine. You should see my GraVoc's staffing Bullhorn One environment
Yes.
for Business Central. All right, let me get one more thing here. Trying to get that picture thing going here, but I'm not quite seeing that, unfortunately. Second, just because it looks cool. I don't see it though. There we go.
On the screen you're
Yeah,
sharing, you hover up and pick it.
and
There
it
it
finally
is.
popped up. There we go. All right, some of these features are pretty neat to have. So um, that way, hopefully, I can draw enough attention through this discussion that everybody that's attending walks away with whatever tidbits of knowledge that you're aiming for. But first off, I just want to say thank you for spending your time here. I'm going to do the best I can to watch the clock and get out of here at a point where there could be some time for some question and answers. This is a live demo. Anything can go awesome. Anything can go wrong. So bear with me as that happens. But to set the stage here just a little bit, I'm the Director of Software Solutions at GraVoc, and I have been working with Dynamics GP for 25 years. I've been with Business Central. I'm now on year number 6 since it came out, and having supporting the ability for customers to adapt and learn, and maybe existing QuickBooks customers to adopt new technologies. It's been quite a ride. There's a lot of great people on our team that know staffing because this has been really our focus for the last good number of years. About 5 years ago, I was in great conversations with our friends at Bullhorn, and Business Central was really great getting some steam, and it was time to build the best possible integration that we could. So we stepped up to the plate as a team, and we've developed a number of methodologies that work really, really well across a number of different Business Central environments. But the reality is Business Central isn't the only ERP that we have a connector for. We do have one for Dynamics Great Plains, and having been a GP person for quite some time, I do have the element of being able to demonstrate some elements of that today in our demo. We also have a third product that really is more for Business Central that I'm all set up and ready to potentially demo that as well in a live fashion so that everybody gets kind of whatever flavor that you're after out of today's time. All right. In the background, what you should first know is that I have my own Bullhorn environment. This is where I'm going to do my integrations from. It's got my own sample candidates, my own sample customers, sales invoices, purchase invoices, and so forth. So yes, it is a demo sample environment. However, it is really beneficial to know that you'll have your own Bullhorn environment too, and I'll be able to, if you're already familiar with Bullhorn, see where some of the elements that we're drawing from come from. I think it helps shorten the learning curve. It helps you get your implementation done in a much more efficient way, in conjunction with what really needs to happen at the end of the day is the back office. And we at the ERP level serve as that back office where Bullhorn One finishes up all the pay and the bill elements, and we are able to bring in the sales invoices and sync the customers such that you can continue the accounts receivable process in the ERP system, produce an aging, provide collections reports, send reminders. There's just so many things that you can do with it. And there is some bi-directional feedback into Bullhorn One, and we're also pretty proud of that because sharing important information among your entire organization is incredibly important for gaining efficiency, getting the right placement, getting the right customer, and solving the problems, which is what we try to take away from you, right? We have an integration that does that solves the problems, so that you don't have to worry about too many kinks in the hose. Very short intro here so that we're setting a good foundation, right? Business Central from Microsoft is a cloud-based ERP. Notice I'm sitting up here in my browser. Okay, I can open up this in many windows. I can open it up in Firefox or Chrome, whatever. There is an app for your phone. There is an app for your iPad. So, you can pretty much get to this from anywhere, including from an application like Microsoft Outlook. Yes, you can use Outlook to interface with Business Central. at some level, and it's really quite interoperable. So that you can see that I'm not really, playing smoke and mirrors. I'm literally in the production environment. I have a company, which is an important point. Business Central has the ability to have many companies, and staffing firms have that. There's been a lot of growth and change and acquisition over the years, but also spinoff and new creativity. And from an accounting standpoint, that can be a pretty big challenge to master and get the financials out in the time that matters, that are accurate. So we have with Business Central two methods. Method number one is to allow yourself to have individual companies. So if you had Great Plains or familiar with that, Dynamics GP would have its own company for company A, company B, company C. Not a problem. It's a great way of doing it. It's out of the box Business Central. There's also this add-in functionality, if you may be familiar with a product from Binary Stream called MEM, or Multi-Entity Management. And that, if you have a lot of growth or a lot of challenge in trying to maintain your books, multi-entity management is a product worth looking at. In essence, you really get one company in your Business Central environment, and there's a delegation inside of that company that allows you to say this is an entity. It has its own tax ID number. It produces its own balance sheets and has its own vendors and so forth. So there's a lot of great conversations we can have if you have a really complex layer to get it into this SaaS-based ERP. Likewise, if you just have a single company, which is really what our demonstration is here about today, you're going to witness essentially what that is like. All right. I am logged into my demonstration company, as you can tell. I can navigate between other companies up at the top right corner. It's very simple. You may have heard of the word Copilot. Yes, that's now part of, it's embedded inside of Business Central as well, and can really help manage your accounts receivable and produce some insightful reporting. Now, I also have what we call a role center. And the role center that I'm logged into right now is a customized role center. There are ways that you can say that you're a accountant or an accounts receivable administrator or a sales order. And in the ERP, that's important because it surfaces things with one-click access that allow you the best possible efficiency to information or to data input at any point in time. We have created a role specific for staffing that interfaces with Bullhorn, and that's what you see here today. All right. So at the basis of any accounting system is the chart of accounts. And a real quick flyby on this, because the whole point is not to train, but to inform. This chart of accounts in the very first column has a numbering sequence. It typically can be 4 digits or 5 digits or 6 digits or however you would like it to be. We prefer numbers, not names. Ultimately, they have descriptions and they define how your accounts are organized in terms of liquidity and so forth in the balance sheet, and then your income statement as well. And for staffing firms, you may have multiple types of income, whether it be direct placement or temporary staffing, or maybe your billable expenses. All that type of stuff would be handled here at the general ledger, account level, so that any activity that's in Bullhorn ultimately maps to your P&L in the ERP at the account level the way that you need it to. Okay, this is a brand new company. There is nothing posted in this environment. All we have is a chart of accounts. We don't even have customers. So part of our live demonstration today shows you how we, GraVoc, can help you as a staffing firm go from 0 to 60 with your Business Central implementation if you choose Bullhorn One and leverage the capabilities of our connector. One important distinction that's worth a short moment of pause. Inside the general ledger setup area, this is a one-time thing, but it's very unique to Business Central. It has this concept called dimensions. And if you're in Great Plains or familiar with GP, you'll be aware of the segments in your chart of accounts. And oftentimes you might have 3 or 4 segments. And one segment is the main account segment, and that's the GL that we just looked at. The second segment might be your branch ID, or the third one might be your department, or your fourth one, the industry. And ultimately, that captures data points as they go into the ERP in a numbers-based account string kind of way. We can accommodate that with the connector, not a problem. However, with Business Central, what dimensions do is they break that link between the segments. They allow you individual tagging mechanisms to tag your debits and credits with an appropriate value. Oftentimes, these are words, not numbers, so that those can look really sharp in analytics as well as be descriptive on demand. Now, in this environment, which is modeled, of course, after a staffing firm, my first dimension here is called the branch. Okay, my second is dimension is called the department, and I have a few other ones out here as well that we GraVoc have developed, knowing staffing in terms of a value or a data point that may be insightful inside of the ERP. Now, these dimensions synchronize themselves, if you will, with Bullhorn One. So if you go inside of the Bullhorn One environment, a key element of setup in there is where we draw these list values from. In Bullhorn, they typically would live on either the earn code or they would live on the placement. You can have them all live on either. We can mix up where they come from. We have some great adaptability into how and where we need to build the account dimensionality so that you're appropriately tagging your data. One note, if you're coming from QuickBooks, the concept of a dimension is that of a class. So depending on how your QuickBooks is set up in one or more of your companies, you really only get one class, and it has a dramatic impact on your limitation of producing financials. So with Business Central, you'll be able to have a good number of classes. Inside of Bullhorn, I'm going to demonstrate by going to the placement 2 section. And this is behind the scenes. This is a setup. If you've never seen Bullhorn before, you can close your eyes. But it's important to note the points of contact, especially at the very beginning. On the placement level, we go after general ledger 1 through 5. Those are values of pick lists that are inside of Bullhorn 1 that are the data tags that we're looking for. So the important point here is we work hand in glove from day one, helping get your Bullhorn 1 implementation set up so that the data flows from the very beginning all the way through to the ERP system on your P&L statement. Now, Business Central has the accounts and the dimensions, and notice I currently have no customers, no master records to transact against. We also have the ability to do banking, electronic banking, and some manufacturing. There's a varying degree of capability, but we're going to stay focused in this particular demonstration. So goal number 1, and this is really the demonstration that shows you the synchronization between Bullhorn 1 and Business Central in a live sort of fashion. All right, over in Bullhorn 1, we have a list of companies. Our companies have a status. So we're allowed to, with the connector, pull companies into Business Central when it's time. When they move from prospect to active or active account or placed or whatever sort of status is in your Bullhorn setup, we will then, upon synchronization run, be able to detect that change and bring those in. I'm not making any changes right now, but if a change would have been made to any of the Bullhorn fields that trigger a change to Business Central, like the address or the phone number, that would trickle down into Business Central on the appropriate customer card as well. So let's start off by looking at our Business Central environment. I currently have no customers. Our application only has 3 windows, so it's really simple to use. The first one is a setup window. The setup information and the pages inside of Business Central really are broken up into fast tabs. Each tab has a logical grouping of fields and switches that mean something. Important note for our demonstration here today, I use this demonstration frequently. So this write back option is a tool that we have developed and we use so that we do one thing. I don't harm my demo data, of course, but there's sometimes the need when you go through your implementation to rely on this setting because we need to test things over and over again. And once certain things in Bullhorn make it past the finish line, it's not going to run another lap. We can't set it back behind the successful flag. So by not setting it beyond the point of no return, using this function, we get the best of all worlds. Just please note that mine is off. I will demonstrate here in a few moments. Bullhorn clearly gives you connection information that is at the API level that is secure and that is controlled specifically by Bullhorn alone. Mapping is an important window that we work with you to determine how many dimensions from Bullhorn, you want to track to Business Central. In this case, and where they live. In this case, to keep this level somewhat simple, the pick list on the left looks inside of Bullhorn, and it looks to find out which segment value we're going to be mapping from. Okay. Notice they have 1 through 5 on their side, and that's because on the Bullhorn side, they only have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so we're syncing pretty tightly to the design element on the Bullhorn side. We go through and we set this up, and as I said, you get flexibility as to where you pull the main account versus the other dimension tags from. Most of them are going to come from your placement, which is really coming from the billable charge or the payable charge. So as those transactions are occurring in Bullhorn, they have these values, and then we know where to pull them together to bring in the data tags. It's pretty much that simple. One additional note is that our working with staffing firms and building some customizations has added some additional dimension options for Business Central ERP. Most notably are two: the customer as a dimension and the placement as a dimension. What that ultimately means is you could possibly, with the appropriate reporting, get very granular profit and loss reporting out of Business Central by grouping or by analyzing any of those groups of data tags and across time. So very insightful data could be available to you within Business Central. Totally an option. Most customers will typically have between 2 and 3, sometimes even 4 dimensions that they're mapping. Again, department, oftentimes the vertical that the placement is in. So some variety up when you go to your implementation. Now, the second screen really has a lot of information. I'm not covering all of it, but note the important pieces here is that we have a sales behavior, a payables behavior. So we can integrate vendors, customers, and we can integrate sales transactions and payables transactions. Okay. And it's those that I'm really going to demonstrate right now. And having worked with a variety of customers over the years, I'll demonstrate by looking at the sales setup here. A number of switches that we can turn on or off, or default values that we can assign, such as the posting date default. We have a pick list, and the pick list can be chosen by you for each company during your implementation. So it really gives you some pretty good control in each of the individual sections as to what sorts of information will be, posting in your system. Clearly, we've got some one-time mapping setups that need to be, configured. Very lightweight in terms of need, but Bullhorn has its own payment terms. And guess what? Business Central, you're going to have your own payment terms too. So as we go through your setup, your UAT, your parallel, and your go live, we ensure that the lists are the same and that there's a complete mapping so that all the transactions are coming through appropriately. Okay. Easy to maintain, even ongoing in case new methods get set up. Let's go to the everyday, I would call this the daily driver window. All right. Generally, the cadence that we see is an integration on a weekly standpoint for sales invoices. And that sales invoice integration is done in the Bullhorn integration window. Okay. Notice that I don't have any customers yet. So let's pretend that we go live today in this demo. And I'm going to show you essentially what that looks like in terms of implementing Business Central and bringing on the Bullhorn connector accordingly. So there's always like a one-time thing that we have to do, right? We have to first off go get our customers. So behind the scenes, however, we've got a few other synchronizations that I'm going to run. And the first one I'm going to run manually, and this is how we would do working with you, your implementation, was we would run this first to make sure that it runs okay. And in essence, the values that you have in general ledger segments 1 through 5 and Bullhorn would then come through and flow into Business Central. So if you had a branch there that we didn't have here, it would create it in Business Central. So it minimizes the friction between data transfer among these two systems. So in Business Central, if you hit the F5 key, it will refresh the page. And you'll notice at the very bottom, we have an integration log. We have our first entry. Notice it recently updated dimensions found 55. Okay. I had 12 branches, a number of departments, and so forth. So it also, in the language of the logging, gives you great detail. Why? Because I want to know as much as I can about anything that may or may not be worthy of knowing, whether it be an error message or sometimes just some information. And we do, I think, a pretty good job of giving you that information just in case. So the second thing I want to do under actions, again, we would do this as your implementation partner, run a one-time customer sync, right? We have the option to synchronize account owners as well, and those come in as salespeople. But in this demonstration environment, I have that turned off out of simplicity at this moment in time. So let's run the customer sync. It's now going to do a look into Bullhorn. It's going to look at essentially this page right here for customers that effectively have the active account. All right. In the background, here's Business Central. If I hit F5, you'll notice at the very bottom, it says that it found found six customers, and it also found 6 contacts. So yes, Business Central does have the ability to synchronize through our connector to Bullhorn One and pull in contacts that are on your billing profiles so that it makes the collections a little easier to maintain when the information about that person is inside of Business Central, as so is the statement or the reminder that would go out inside customer-facing fashion. Now, the next thing I'm going to demonstrate here is a sales invoice import. Actually, let me escape. I'm going to go all the way back to my home page, and I'm going to hit F5. Okay. Notice on my info page, my role center, I now have 6 customers. Okay. That's part of Business Central is your home page will update periodically. Let me drill into this for a moment. So what happened? We successfully imported those 6 customers. Okay. Currently, if you see on the right, they have no balance. We have no transactions that we've brought in for any of these customers yet. Okay. However, this is what we call a list page. A list page in Business Central is a very malleable object, if you will. I'm going to come and cover all of that stuff another point in time. But let's get their invoices in for these customers. Inside of the Bullhorn integration page, we're going to drive into the Run Sales Invoice Import. What's going to happen? On the Bullhorn side, under the Invoices page, it's going to look for export queued sales invoices. What happens here and why? The Bullhorn sales invoice is not ready yet for going to the ERP because that is something that happens as the very, very last thing. And that very last thing is moving it to export successful. Our integration handles that on a document by document basis. So if it fails to import to Business Central, it actually marks it as failed on the document in Bullhorn One, and it writes an error message to the Bullhorn connector log in Business Central so the user sees it, and we write back into the issue log in Bullhorn pay bill so you can see something happened there as well. So again, visibility all around, especially when a document fails to make it in. Well, why would a sales invoice fail to make it in? It could happen because maybe the synchronization of customer is out of sync. Maybe you tried to invoice a customer that wasn't active, so it didn't get synced properly. It could be for a variety of reasons. However, just note that we handle that. You're never left guessing as to the status of the sales invoices on any given day. The idea is to come in here, export queued and export failed, and the goal is to handle all of these after every run. Okay, we have nothing that's failed. That's a good thing. But remember, I don't have any write back turned on in my demo environment. So they're going to stay as export queued right now. Let's do that demonstration. Run sales invoice import. I'm in Business Central. I'm not in a third-party product. I didn't have to schedule anything. All I now need to do is just run this process. Now, when I hit F5, what's going to go on in the background is it's going to go look for any new dimensions. It's going to look for new or modified customers, and then it's going to bring in the sales invoices. so that it doesn't try to bring in an invoice for a customer that doesn't yet exist. It's an important part of the order of operations. But when it's done, it runs fairly swiftly. Notice that on the top right corner, it says 8 of 3. Now I say 8 of 4. If I leave this page because I have 500 that need to be loaded, and I go home and I hit F5, notice the sales invoices and the sales credit memo, these would continue to increase in the background. I know our sample only has those 7 out there right now, but we have invoices and we have credit or credit and rebill situations. So whatever numbering system is used in Bullhorn, if it's a negative sales invoice or a negative sales document, it also comes in and it also has the same dimensionality as would the invoice that it originated from. Let's take a look at the integration page. Note the log at the very bottom. I did force capture an error for demonstration purposes. Okay, we have a number of successfuls, but we also have a failure. So this invoice, number 22, dimension 1 is missing a value. There's a charge on that sales invoice that somehow is missing one of the data tags that's really important for your analytics. So part of the connector looks for things and enforces business rules that are insightful, obviously. Otherwise, you end up with gaps and holes in and exceptions when you run your analytics. So notice that it marked 1 as failed and successful as 7. So hence the 6 invoices and the 1 sales credit memo. Let's have a look. In Bullhorn itself, let's go to, I believe it is this number 18. This is a 1-line invoice. However, our integrations, especially at least on the Great Plains side, we've seen some invoices that are over 7,000 lines long. So if you're concerned about volume, we have some numbers and some data and some recommendations on how to deal with that. But at the end of the day, the customer essentially got this invoice number, this invoice date, whatever PO number, right, and the line items. So the goal of our connector is to take this information and transport that into Business Central. We want to do the accounting on this. So whatever revenue code Bob earned, whatever dimension values that Bob worked for, we want that to be now part of the ERP distributions. And we also want to ensure that the grand total here matches so that we're not creating variances between Business Central and Bullhorn One, because it causes accounting reconciliation challenges, write-offs, and generally kind of a nightmare. So we've been through plenty of thousands of these integrations at a document level basis, and I believe that we've got a pretty solid process for capturing and blocking items that don't add up, that don't make sense, so that we can investigate those and get it right on that first import. I'm going to point out briefly on the sales invoice while we're here, there is this field off to the right here called accounts receivable. So this invoice is in Business Central right now. We just imported it. Someday, the customer is going to pay that invoice, and it's going to have an amount remaining of 0. And there is a bidirectional synchronization that we have that will write that to this point when that happens inside of Business Central. I will circle back to that in a few minutes. Let's go back to the invoice. This is a list page again, just like the customer page, list of sales invoices that we just successfully imported to Business Central. I'm going to pop into the very first item here. And in this hyperlink, I'm going to fold down the fast tabs just to keep it introductory. The sales invoice page is a document, customer-facing document. It has, header and footer level, as well as just general information about the document. We have mapped as much as we can from Bullhorn One into this in a pretty steady and reliable fashion. It allows us that bidirectional sync. It also allows us to get the dimensionality right for your financial analytics. The important piece of this here is really at the lines level, where this is the person that was on that sales invoice, the units, the total, the grand total of this. I guess this is invoice number 13. If I hit next, right, as I can scroll, these are not yet posted. They're just sitting here waiting to be posted. All right, here's that invoice that we were looking at. I can scroll to the right now and notice that the branch code that really is from the placement, the department from the placement, the customer value, the placement code. So all this information is part of the native connector that we have, depending on how many dimensions you configure. When I slide to the right, though, another element of why our integration with just staffing in general is beneficial is these field values like week ending date, first name, middle name, last name. And even off to the right here, I have 4 additional fields. 2 values coming from the placement from the charge, 2 values coming from, I believe, the placement. 1 from the charge, 1 from the placement. So there's other values that are text values that you may want in your analytics that we can go and get without having to customize the product. We've already done that. We made it flexible so that we can go after additional information and get your deployment done as quickly as possible. Now, this is a sales invoice. You typically in Business Central wouldn't send it from here. You wouldn't email it from here because the Bullhorn invoice generation and email process is really where that energy goes. Remember, we're the back office. We have our list of sales invoices. If those invoices would have been successful or failed, this would have been marked back accordingly. Again, I had my write back turned off, so they're still going to be here. Okay. But here are my sales invoices inside of Business Central with GL dimensions and values and so forth. Right. From here, it is really not, a whole lot more in terms of receivables, right? We post the receivables, we run an aging report. There's a lot of Business Central specific capability and functionality. We will be doing, and I know we have some desire to do some more Business Central specific highlights and concept focus to help staffing firms. But in the meantime, work with Matt. We'll be working together as a team to do a more of a closed up demo for your environment and take certain things to where they might need to go to help get you to essentially the goal line of making sure that you get this, this reliable push button integration that really whoever you delegate can have access to running at any time. I'm going to pause for 1 second. I'm going to switch topics. We're going from the left rail to the right rail for just a moment. We just talked about Business Central and we demonstrated the sales invoice and connector, right? We import the sales customers, we bring in the sales invoices and credit memos, we bring in all the general ledger information. Now, there are a lot of folks here, I believe, on the demo that still have Dynamics Great Plains. And the reality is I want to give a couple of moments to the same 3 windows in Great Plains so you guys can see and understand a little bit more about that part of the offering. Right. This is not a running, working demo environment here for Great Plains. But in essence, you've got the same concept here. We get the API user login, we get the information we need for whether it be a non-production or production environment. Once that's in here, we have the same write back options, so we can perform the same level of testing and evaluation and all that stuff, as well as ongoing support, especially as you go live and encounter some things that we want to make sure you get worked out. This has a number of tabs. The most important tab is where you map the general ledger account string. So just like Business Central had the account plus dimensions, this for Great Plains has segment 1, segment 2, segment 3, segment 4. So we can build your account string from the same type of window. We also, with GP, because of the way the account string works, we can assign a static value of like 000 or 00 as a fill. Just in case, so that we don't have to source that string value or that segment value from Bullhorn. It just, we know GP, so we want to give you that straight that value option there. So sales setup, clearly there's a number of user-defined fields and capabilities that we have with the sales connector. You see that here all in the sales tab. Yes, our sales connector is also, I would say, memified. So if you have or are familiar with multi-entity management for Great Plains, it is available for Business Central, like I said, but with Great Plains, we have it. It is an option available with our connector. Payable side, I'll speak a moment. Great Plains especially does a pretty good job of doing 1099 vendors and 1099 miscellaneous vendors. So we do synchronize with vendors of 1099 employee type in Bullhorn. So those folks typically don't have deductions, they don't have payroll taxes. So those folks are left with how do we pay them if you're not using a W-2 type payroll system. So both our connectors, BC and GP, can synchronize and bring in either those 1099 types, but we've also expanded it to bring in sub vendors and do some sub vendor type of integration to Great Plains, meaning all the 10 employees essentially are working for a sub vendor so that you want to pay the sub vendor. It's pretty complex. This is great stuff, but we do have a lot of scenarios here with respect to payables that we can cover another day. If you have GP payroll or want to switch from a system that that needs to continue GP payroll, yes, we do. We can do employee synchronizations. We can also do standard GP payroll. And I'll highlight at the bottom here, burden is something that can be calculated from added costs to your cost of goods sold. And then we have a couple of different methodologies that we can write to a custom object in Bullhorn so that once the payroll is done in GP, we can give accurate data based on placements on where they worked in relative percentages on the Bullhorn side. So pretty neat stuff there, but your module-based setups are here. Nothing super fancy to call out during this demo. But ultimately, no, just like the Business Central side, this is very GP specific in terms of features that we may or may not want, such as leveraging the sales order processing user-defined fields and the payroll user-defined fields for certain information. Right. The third window is the daily driver. Right. Once a week, once every couple of days, whatever the cadence is in your organization. This is the application that runs the show. The ribbon left to right shows the sales invoice or the sales element, which is our standard connector. Pretty much everybody would want the standard connector because it goes on the bill side of the Bullhorn product. The payables integrations, sometimes it's not needed at all because you only have W-2 or you have a way of paying your non-W-2 folks that outside of Dynamics Great Plains. All is fair and fine. And then the payroll integrations here, you have the option to do external payroll for anybody that's in your pay bill situation. But we also have the capability of if you put your internal payroll through Bullhorn, we can handle that a little bit differently so that those folks rely on their salary and keep some of that information more private, if you will, inside of the Bullhorn area. We've developed a number of utilities that we found very insightful for doing single imports or single synchronizations or handling use cases that we've learned over the thousands and thousands of transactions that we've been importing over the years. But I wanted to give you an insight because I know there's an audience today that has an interest on the Dynamics GP side of this. Could demonstrate one more component here, if I would. This last piece. I'm going to bounce back into Business Central for a second because and highlight a concept here maybe over the last probably 6 minutes if I can, where people are transforming. You guys are transforming from where you are to wherever the future holds, and that digital transformation doesn't go this. It's not the same path for every person or every organization, and the development of our connector, the Microsoft platform, whether it be Business Central or Great Plains, we've been to Engage a number of times, and I know this is more or less a private invitation to come to post-Engage follow-up, and so I can certainly highlight and speak that. We learn from customers and Engage in what they're looking for. I want to show everybody one more thing because we actually do get asked during implementations, oh, what do we do about that? Because we're not always top of mind. Oh, we're not acquiring somebody in 9 months when we really need to know. So I want to demonstrate very quickly a product here that does the same thing for Business Central. So if you're on a legacy system, let's call it BBO, right? Bullhorn Back Office. It could be anything, but you want to get this piece, your ERP part of your tech stack right. we have the ability to get you a fully blown GL, AP, AR, bank rec system up and deploy this extension that we've built here called the BBO transport. And the goal here is to try to make it easy for you to do data loading based off of a reasonably templated source file. So if I can, I'm going to demonstrate two imports so that you're aware of this, because this product can work hand in glove with the Bullhorn One connector, especially if you have a couple of companies now on Bullhorn One and you're going to be acquiring companies and you want to get them onboarded into Business Central as quickly as possible, or you're not ready yet to go to Bullhorn, whatever. So there's so many options with this tool. Again, reasonable layout. This is my customer list, my number, my name directly from Bullhorn. So the cleaner the data in this simple file for customers, payment terms, and so forth, the easier it is to go to and use this customer transport. I will literally drag this customer file here. Business Central is going to ingest that file showing a load status, transport completed, and I now have 25 customers. So in this sample environment, just like I did with the Bullhorn connector, I loaded those 25 customers. Okay, so go live can go pretty quickly and swiftly. You can also bring in changes the same way or net adds. Let's do the fun one, the sales invoice import. This one will take just a moment, and I can let Matt start speaking as soon as this is about done, or as soon as this gets going here, because I want to make sure we have plenty of time to get your questions going, answer anything that might be in the queue. But let me grab this file. This is a sales invoices file, and a lot of staffing firms have volume. It's very detail oriented, and I wanted to present a realistic example. This is a data set of made up data that has 1,100 lines on it. Okay, that's divided up across a grouping of customers and a grouping of invoices. So to demonstrate sort of an A to Z thing here, I'm going to take this sales invoices and I'm going to drag it over. It's going to read in all the data and it's going to flip out of this window in just a second. Bear with me. Remember, 1,100 lines, so it's a fair amount of data. You'll see that it's importing here. If I go back to this page and I hit F5 in the background, notice that the number of invoices currently says 30. I hit F5, it's at 57. So for those 1,100 lines or 500 or 200, whatever it is, you don't have to stay and look at it go through the import process or the spinning circle thing. So when
Hey,
this is
David,
done,
we have a couple questions. Maybe while that's loading, we could potentially read if you want.
yep, let's go ahead and do that. Well, this is running in the background, and then I want
Yeah,
to run a couple of analysis. Go right ahead. Read the first one for me.
there was a question that came through. I just saw it here. There was a comment. Bullhorn One also has an issue log under pay bill entity that populates at the time of export. What does the GraVoc error log provide that either the integration log or the Bullhorn error log does not?
Our log entry is exactly the same in both places. We only log errors on the Bullhorn side. Otherwise, it gets chatty. They don't need to know about all the successes. It's marked successful on a status on the status field, so that it's it's past the end of the transactional line.
Okay, we got a thumbs up from that.
Solid. Okay, great.
Yeah.
All right, great.
And then how does the integration handle multi-currency?
We have two customers right now that are going through multi-currency. On the Great Plains side, we've had US dollars in Canada with MEM, and so far we made it through 4 rounds of test, parallel 1 through 3, as well as operational dry run, and they're going live. We just had our move to production meeting. So that's gone really well. On the Business Central side, I believe we have 2 customers that are in that UAT phase right now. So nobody currently on multi-currency live with Business Central and the connector, but we're waiting on that data to come because we're ready this week to have that. So yeah, I don't anticipate any issues at all. My background's multi-currency in general, especially on the Dynamics GP side. So I'll know, I'll be very confident when it's right.
And from our current customer base, it's really about half and half now, isn't it? It's half GP, half BC. Isn't that accurate?
Yeah, I think it's leaning slightly more GP just because there's so many people that are moving out of eRecruit, but
Yeah,
they're not ready to go with Business Central yet. And that's the point of that's the important part of the connectors that we have is the bridge. Is that if you're say eRecruit and you're moving into GP, or you like your GP, you can keep your GP, go with our connector to GP, and then we can help you get to Business Central maybe someday if you really need to, want to, and you can continue to use our connector over there. Why? Because the way that it pulls the general ledger information and syncs to customers is exactly the same. So unless
beautiful.
you have to structurally change something on the Bullhorn One side, you have a path for, a path to the cloud on whatever, cadence it is that you want to take it there.
Great, great. And then to the audience also is that if you do have a more detailed question that's a little bit challenging
Mhm.
to type, just to be clear, just raise your hand, and one of the GraVoc team will unmute you and give you a chance to ask your question. There was another question here that we haven't addressed. Do we have the ability to log per placement granularity of sales data? If we have our payroll detailed per placement, can we pair that to run true weekly GP out of the BC/GP dataset in brackets Power BI? Does that is that a little
That's worth a
challenging?
discussion. It's worth a discussion to make sure that I fully understand
It's
that
in the
piece, especially
Q&A if you need to read
with the
it with
power
your
piece
own
of that.
eyes, David.
Let's see here if I can locate that guy. Because the presenter things are a little funny here. Let's see. Chat.
While David's looking at that, but if the audience, wants to raise their hand, ask a question, this is a good time to do it.
See. Which part of the chat is it? I see the meeting chat. Is it in the
The
Q&A?
Q&A
Okay,
section.
I'll get there. I'm a little check challenge
Okay.
sometimes. Here we go. This is likely an okay. Okay. Let's see. Do we have the ability to log per placement granularity of sales data? For payroll detail per placement, can we pair that to run truly weekly GP out of the GP dataset Power BI? I'd say it's quite possible, yes. We have our goal is to, with our product, to try to enable as best we possibly can really good gross margin reporting at the general ledger level. I hope that helps because it kind of sounds like you're trying to get in that direction so that the costs and the revenues are really sitting in the right place where Power BI especially can give you the pictures, right? The data elements of that. Speaking of the data elements of that, I hope that I answered that question. If not, follow up, with Matt, reach out directly. We'll certainly
Yeah.
do that. And the elements of speaking of Power BI, if you have not seen or dealt with it yet, part of our capabilities here are this is Power BI reporting, especially for the volume of receivables that you'll be managing in Business Central or inside of Great Plains. This specific dashboard is one of my favorite ones because it's actually 6 reports in one. It's currently written against Great Plains, but it works also in a similar format against against Business Central. So some visual indicators about aging and buckets and quantities, and then the capability with the Power BI report to right click and drill through. It's truly life altering. The ability to just touch through some of these things with the automation, the auto refresh that goes in the background from whatever ERP system it is that you choose to use. Are there any other questions?
Awesome.
We get through them all. I
I
do
don't.
have one last topic if I can. It's short, it's quick.
Yeah, go ahead. Keep going until we
So we mentioned the
have some hand
bidirectional
raising.
synchronization, which I have not demonstrated yet, but I will show you a byproduct of having that done. We were looking to run data into Business Central earlier to integrate it. Let's look at one that's actually already been brought into Business Central. Okay. In Business Central had gone into one of these that I brought in and had paid and marked it. I did a cash receipt in Business Central. in a different company, because remember, we started with no companies, but I entered and posted a cash receipt. And part of that bi-directional synchronization writes back to Bullhorn now under this accounts receivable tab, essentially it's really 4 bits of data. How much was paid? Okay, in this case, it was $10,000 on this invoice, but this invoice was $29,000. So what I really like about this bi-directional sync is it's sharing important, financial status information. And if I scroll over here to the right, let me click on, let's say 2021, and I scroll to the right here. This is the live action screen of invoices in Bullhorn. Notice that this one here says amount due of 0. Well, that's because I actually posted a cash receipt in full and paid it. So the status in Bullhorn automatically changed on this. So you can see visibly whether it's paid, it's partial, or it hasn't been paid at all yet. So 3 really nice indicators upstream, if you will, of the status that really is available inside of Business Central. That was my last point, Matt. Thank you.
Okay. All righty. Well, let's do this. Let's wind it down. David, I might go
Great.
back and share my screen here just real quickly. First of all, and finally, I also want to just thank everybody for attending today's event. And digital applause for you, David, on doing a great demonstration. Um, Listen, here's my contact information. Reach out to my direct number, send me an email. You will all be receiving a link to this demonstration with a video link, so you'll be able to review it. Um, Please reach out to me anytime to discuss any further questions, and I'll be glad to organize the right people to, help you answer them, and discuss whatever you need to make your work and your tasks in your day run more smoothly and more automatically. So we're going to wind it down now. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending. Everyone have a great rest of your week, and reach out to me if you have any questions. Thank you very much.